All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Sai Marie Johnson today. Sai is an author that focuses mainly on writing paranormal books out there from the Pacific Northwest. And Sai has some things that she's experienced over the years out there in mainly Oregon, right?
Yeah, mostly Lane County, but some
awesome.
other little spots too.
Yeah, Lane County is a fun area. That's where I like to focus when I go out there, and it's hard to go most other places. Welcome to the show, Sai. And
Thanks for having me.
It's fun to have you here for sure. So let's start out with this. Did you grow up in Oregon, so 100% Pacific Northwest, or did you move there maybe later in life?
Okay, so it's a little bit of nuanced because I was born in Eugene in 1994, but in 1995, my mom moved to Tennessee, and I lived for basically all of my life till I was 11 in Oregon. And my dad at times lived more in Southern Oregon and at times more Northern Oregon. So when they got divorced, I would go visit him in different spots. So I got a lot around Oregon. And then I lived in the South till I moved back to Oregon in 2014, and I've been back since then.
That is fantastic, though, because growing up, you're getting both the weirdness of Oregon and the weirdness of Tennessee, which how many people can say that's extremely special. What state do you think is weirder from what you've experienced?
I also lived in Alabama down on the Florida border where about Skunk Ape is. And I was there for 5 years. I was married to somebody who was in the military, and they were stationed down by Eglin Air Force Base. That was where I had the most weird experiences, to be real with you, was down there in that little town in Alabama, other than here in Oregon. The primary, and I've had a lot of other types of paranormal experiences, and I never really am like out trying to ghost hunt or anything like that looking for these things. It's usually just happenstance. Florella, Alabama, yeah, I had a lot. That was really a weird place.
Interesting. Let's start with why we're here today, I guess would be a good place to start. Yeah. So you were telling me before we started recording that you have a lot of interesting anecdotes from your family history. Yes. As well about experiencing things in Oregon.
I told you a little bit before the show started that I come from family, a lot of which has generations in Oregon, and some of whom also helped pave log roads and stuff like that. So some of these lore, if you will, were already in my family ahead of time. And the first time I remember hearing about Bigfoot, I was about 5. And this happened with my dad. Now, he passed away in 2022, so it's been 3 years now. But this story stood out because it was the one I first really was like, what are you talking about? But this is one of my family stories, was with my dad and his hunting buddy. And they used to go up, particularly near McGowan and Shotgun Creek, and there's this place called Old Camp Creek Road. And people that are familiar with the area will probably know that if you go drive down to the end of the road there's like some old BLM land, but there's some roads that you can still go on. It's not forestry land. You can still go up there, and people go and throughout these different spots looking for deer. Back then, I'm a little bit older now. I'm going to give away some of that, but this was like 1989. So it was a lot more remote then. And there's still abundance of deer out there, but it was just a lot more remote than it is now. There's been more building and lots of fires. They were going into serious timber country, and they were seasoned hunters. They know these woods like the back of their hand, basically familiar with every sound, like anything, they'd be like on it. They were really good at tracking. And I guess what they were talking about was, they were telling my mom the story, and I was sitting there listening, was there was this sudden deep guttural grunting noise, and it wasn't like any other animal that they had ever heard in the forest out there. And it was like heavier, not quite like a bear sound. And my dad was instantly like, that's something different. And he said that there was this kind of weird, strange smell that came over, and it was like really musky, deep, woodsy smell, kind of, yeah, like an animal musk, if you will. And if you're a hunter, you get a nose for that kind of stuff. So it was really pungent, and he said it just washed over the area. And he was hearing this sound and smelling this scent, and he looks around and his friends, do you hear that? And he's, yeah. And then all of a sudden they heard this earth-shattering crack, and it was like it wasn't quite like a shotgun, but it was like somebody took something and hit it really hard. And now, like, after the fact, I pretty much have figured out that was tree knocking. And it seems like it was trying to scare them away, is what my dad had said, that it was not really like violent or aggressive, but that they had gotten up there in the woods near something or in an area it didn't want them to be in. And he said that his friend was like, no, there's something up there. I can see it. And he looked through the woods, but it was really hard to like completely make out. But it was like a tall entity, and it had like darkish, blackish fur. And it was standing just like looking at them, and it had really like intense, like dead on them eyes. And they were both just frozen. Well, what do we do? And my dad was like, this seems like it might be Bigfoot. Let's just get out of here. So then they turned around and they went back to their truck, and they came back, and they immediately came back. And that's part of the reason why this conversation stands out so much, because it was like a core memory for me, was because they came back early, and my mom was like, you didn't maximize the hunting day. What's going on? And they started being like, no, there was something weird out there, and we didn't want to stick around. So they just, after hearing that grunt and then that loud crack, they were gone.
So you said Shotgun Creek, and that's up by Marcola, right?
Yes, and Marcola was a place that they would often go to like stage and get gear before they would go up there. And you can get to McGowan, and you can also go out Camp Creek like through a couple of different intersectional roads out this way. So it's like Marcola bleeds in, and Shotgun Creek is the closest to Marcola store. And they started to go out Shotgun Creek that day. He never really told me or took me to the exact location that it happened, but he was just like, if you go up there, only go to the places that are like where they do the ATV or they do the shooting range, or go up there to the summit. Don't go further up driving around. And he always kind of warned me not to do that.
Oh, that's really interesting. That is actually an area that area is starting to come up more and more over the last few months. For some reason, came up in another episode where guy found a flipped Bronco and some weird stuff out in the woods, and possible nests, and hearing weird stifled breathing. Just a large figure ran away from them too in the trees. Sounds like a really weird area. And is it out there in the sticks a bit?
It's the way it seems. It's not very far from Springfield when you think about it. So you can get back to the super Walmart in no time at all, within 10-15 minutes. But because of the way the mountains are and the logging roads, you can go up there and you can get lost in the thick of everything. And like some of them are gated off and they're just not even open for years. One time I actually went out there and we experienced where we went down one of these roads, and this is off topic, but just to give you some insight, it had an open gate that hadn't been open for years. It looked like it was a great road, and we ended up breaking an axle. So yeah.
Oh man, that's some scary stuff, especially and gates that are open can become closed when you're in there too. That's another thing. But yeah, those roads, those Forest Service roads, I tried drive. Do you know where Hills Creek Reservoir is down by Oak Ridge?
Yes.
Yeah, the big one. So I got the bright idea this last time. I'm going to go across the bridge onto the other side, and I was going to try to find that Boy Scout camp with the hot springs. It did not turn out well. I was going up a hill. I was like, I'm going to break an axle. So I had to go backwards down this hill with like almost breaking axles. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I should be out here by myself. This is not a wise choice. Goes to show that definitely just be careful out there, guys. When you're on these Oregon service roads, go with someone who knows what they're doing and be prepared. But so that was the first thing that pretty much you had heard where you're hearing this family Bigfoot story?
Yes. And then I started to get older, and when I was about 9, my dad started gold prospecting in Myrtle Creek, and that was when I had my first weird experience of like my own, where I was like, well, maybe they're not just telling me tall tales so I won't be scared of the woods. I was about 9, like I said, and it was the spring, and my dad at that time was living in Myrtle Creek, and he was prospecting And they were out at this one remote location, not far from Myrtle Creek, but it was just like one of their spots where they were prospecting for gold. So not everybody got to know where it was. And we were spending the week with him, but he still had to work. So he had made an agreement with his boss that since he was camping on site, if he made sure that we stayed in certain areas, could we come camp with him? And of course, my dad raised his kids to be like woodsy and smart and listen and pay attention and all those kinds of things. So he knew that if he told us to stay in certain areas that we would listen for the most part. Every kid has moments where they test their parents. But so we got to go and we were camping down there, and my dad was down and he was panning, and he was teaching my little brother how to pan. And I already knew how to do that. So I was not that invested or interested at 9, playing with dirt and water. So I was like, I'm going to go for a walk over here through this field. Just when he's okay, don't go past the spot at the forest line where I told you, and just watch out for anything, because there could be cougars or there could be squatch. And that was exactly what he said, his exact words: watch out for cougars or squatch.
Oh, wow.
I was like, are you kidding me, Dad? And I walk out there and I didn't think anything of it. I was a skeptic at this point. They're over doing their thing. There was nobody else around. It was the 1 o'clock in the afternoon, bright day, beautiful Oregon day, honestly, for the spring. And I'm just walking through this field like a kid collecting daisies, daydreaming, bored. And all of a sudden, I hear like this breathing sound, and then another one of those little knocks. But it wasn't like the cracking loud one like my dad described. It was just like a little tiny, just a little bit of an echo. And I turn around, and at first I thought maybe my dad was messing with me, and him and my brother had come around and they were like on the sidelines in the trees or something. But there was nobody there. And I didn't see anything. That was the weirdest thing about this experience. But I was like, you're just freaking out because, what my dad just said. Just keep walking. If you see anything, go back to the camp. Don't be scared. Continue walking. I hear it again. Turn around. Still nothing. After I heard it the third time, I was like, no, you know what? I don't know what that is, but there's something out here that is smart enough to signal like that. And whatever it's doing, watching and doing that doesn't make me comfortable, and I don't want to test it. So I went back and I told my dad, and he, of course, went back to, what did I tell you? There's Squatch out here. Like, we're way out here, and Myrtle Creek is pretty remote, honestly. Douglas County is really thick, dense forestry. So, yeah.
Man, that's something to experience as a 9-year-old. Did you ever have a conversation with your dad later in life? Anything, okay, did something happen to you when you're prospecting down there to make you talk like that to us? Be careful, the Squatch are out here.
He said when they first got down there that same smell was around one of the time when they were like just starting to set stakes and set the camp. And they had different kind of equipment because he was working for a company. He had like real prospecting equipment and stuff. And so he was like skeptical, but he didn't hear any more knocking or anything. And he walked around the perimeter and he was like, I didn't see anything specific, but just the smell and the fact that they were out so far, and a lot of the locals had told him that they had Sasquatch experiences up there, was why he felt that way. And then when I told him that I heard the knocking like that, and there's nobody, there were 3 people, me, my brother, and my dad, that were in that vicinity. And he knew that for sure because he was and with the company too, having to make sure the equipment didn't get stolen and stuff like that. They were very vigilant. And yeah, he didn't say that he had any weird experiences directly or that he's seen or heard anything, just that one smell. And on account of what he had heard from locals, he didn't want to test it. And one of the things that I got told when I was young, because I do have some native relatives as well, was that Squatch liked to take young girls or young maidens, women. So I don't know if they did that to do the boogeyman effect, but that was enough for me when I heard that.
At that point, you're 9 years old and you had this very strange thing happen when you're out with your father. Are you 100% then, okay, Bigfoot is real? it's out there, or you still, I don't know, maybe it was a bird or something?
At that point, I had actually had a weird experience just the summer before at Hasita Head, which was totally unrelated to this. But because of it, I started to open my mind a little bit more. And I was like, wait a minute. And that Hasita Head, like I said, totally unrelated, wasn't about Sasquatch, but it was enough to make me go, maybe some of the local tales that happen here aren't just made up tall tales. Maybe I need to be a little bit more open-minded and consider the source of what I'm being told and their experiences, and not just be such a skeptic. So when my dad had given me that warning and that experience happened, I didn't test it. I just was like, for the rest of the duration that I was there, I stayed near the camp. I was like, nope, I don't need to find out more from where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so weird because I'm looking at the map at the same time. I know stuff happens down there, but there is such a gaping hole in sighting reports around Myrtle Creek and Roseburg right now. And I think some of that might be just people that know things might not want to come on record about it, because I know stuff happens down there.
As far as like that experience with me, then I heard, after that happened and I went and I told my dad about it, when I got back, I talked to my mom about it. And that's the native side of my family comes from my mom. And I talked to her and my uncle, who most of their life, they grew up in McKenzie, and they were like near Blue River, which a lot of these places are burned up now.
Yeah.
But they grew up where a majority of the Holiday Farm fire was.
Okay.
Out there, my mom told me that one time her and my uncle were swimming out at McKenzie Bridge, and they were just, this is something they did all the time. So this was the middle of the day, and they were both said that they were chilling, swimming, and they were startled by the sound of something moving in the bushes, and it was really fast, and like the bushes were like shaking really fast, and they didn't know what was coming through, so they were like, because they're in the middle of the water, in the middle of the woods, and they were expecting that they were going to see a big animal like a bear maybe, and nothing came though. They seen the movement, but nothing came bumbling through the brush. And so they're like, okay, what was that? And I guess they were like 10 and 11 at this time. And so my uncle, he's the younger one. He was like, come on, let's go check it out. My mom was like, no, there's something wrong out there. And she didn't want to, but reluctantly, because he decided to just go running after it. She's okay, so I'm going to follow after him. She goes and she follows after him, and they went some distance into the woods until he stopped, because he said that he's seen a dark, hairy figure, similarly to like what my dad's buddy had seen, and it had eyes intently staring at them, like it was trying to, like it wanted, like from the beginning, it did the whole bush shaking thing to draw their attention, like to lure them in. And after that, he remembered the native stories, and my mom was with him, and he was like, no, we need to go back. I think it wants to take you. And they ran away. And so then after that, I'm like, okay, so now I've got it from both my dad and my mom's side. And you're more likely to start believing something once both of your parents believe it. That's always a thing, right? So I think that definitely opened my mind even more. But then I left Oregon for a while, and I didn't come back until January 2014. And at that time, Bigfoot immediately came right back into my life. It was funny because I was with a friend group, and a person who ended up becoming my boyfriend and is now my ex-boyfriend in that friend group, him and two of our mutual friends had all had an experience like 2-3 years before up Shotgun Creek as well. These were three guys that liked to go, for lack of a better word, drifting around the woods, doing things, being crazy and real junkies. But they happened to be going up Shotgun just to drive around to do that. And my ex was trying to become a drift racer as a profession, so he had some kind of excuse for doing it. But anyway, so they were going up there doing this, and they had been doing it for a while, and they decided to just pull off and take a break. And they were sitting there talking, and it was starting to get to dusk, and wherever they had pulled off up there at Shotgun Creek was off on one of these log roads. Still can't identify which one. I know that this has happened on enough of those logwoods that you're more than likely to find it if you do it enough. But anyway, so they are pulled off, and all of a sudden something comes up, and it comes on the back of the car. And my theory is the reason why I chose to do this was because of them acting like hooligans and making noise and drifting around, knocking rocks around and stuff like that, right? And it came up and it lifted like the back of the bumper, and it shook the car. And as they looked back, they said that they seen a hairy man that was like, and this is the best description I got from anyone that actually really saw it, because my ex was the driver. I looked in the rearview mirror and I could see like the ape band of the eyebrow and the eyes, and they were angry and red. And this thing was like trying to rip back of my car off, like it was trying to get us. And I slammed on the gas and got out of there. And the other two guys that were in the car when it happened were right there sitting there, and they're like, that is exactly what happened. And we all saw it.
Oh my goodness. And just to clarify, so when you say like drifting, so like in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, like that kind, oh my goodness, that makes the story so good. So they're like drifting around Forest Service roads, and then Bigfoot gets mad and just like, stop it, and just lifts the car. Oh, it's such a good account. That is great.
I was told this, and I'm like, holy crap. So then, that brings me to the anecdote that happened with my brother and my uncle, which was actually on Warm Springs Res.
Oh, nice. I never hear stuff from there.
This one, I have to be careful because I have to respect the native culture. And that's part of the reason why I'm telling this anecdote, is because it's a warning to other people.
Okay.
If you ever do get a chance to go on to Warm Springs and you're invited by any of the natives and they tell you not to go to certain spots, do not go to them. Don't ask them why. Don't. That's basically the long and short of that. But the story goes, so my uncle is actually really good friends with most of the elders on the council at Warm Springs. And this comes from a lot of the things that he's done to help the community and mutual aid and stuff like that, which is important to talk about because it is Native American Heritage Month, to respect them and help them and listen to their stories. So this one's really cool and also scary. My brother was invited with my uncle to go up there to camp on the edge of the treaty line. And what I mean by that is within Warm Springs, when they got pushed to that reservation, it's in the middle of the desert, really. There were other things. And there are two things that they'll tell you that were there when they got there. And that was the little people and Bigfoot. Oh. And that since they had to go live on these lands, the elders decided to make a treaty agreement with both the little people and Bigfoot that they would go so far to where the river was, and that none of their people would go to past the halfway point of the river. And as long as no one goes past the halfway point of the river, that the treaty agreement between the creatures and the people would be, there would be peace. They wouldn't come and take anything from the people. They wouldn't mess with them. So my brother got invited with my uncle to go do that and also participate in Sweat Lodge, which are honors.
Yeah, totally.
And there was one other gentleman who had also been invited to do the same. Unfortunately, he was not able to continue because when they got there, the first things that they were told is, look, these are the rules. This is the treaty line. You don't go past it. If you hear anything over there on that side of the embankment of the river, whether it's howling, knocking, screaming, shrieking, anything, you ignore it and you don't go over there. If you fear, because they brought dogs with them, if you fear that your dogs will go chase after the noise, you need to make sure that your dog is kennelled and tied up in your tent or under control as soon as dusk falls. Because if your dog runs over there, you can't go after it. You're not allowed to go over there. If you go over there, you will be immediately removed from the res. My brother and my uncle are like, okay, that's fine. So then the course of the night begins and everybody's having a good time. And then it gets like, my brother said it was like 10 o'clock at night. And the other gentleman that was there with them decided for some reason that he was hot. He wanted to go swimming. So he starts going towards the water and they're like, you should really not go over there. And he's, no, wait, you guys hear something? I'm hearing something. No. This is just so weird, all of it. But they're listening, and then the dog, my uncle's dog, Angel, she stood up on her haunches and all the hair went up on her back and she started barking. And this dog was a golden retriever who was on point. Like, she lived for 18 years and she was used to going in the wildest of wilds with him. But she also didn't move because he told her to stay. But she was growling, sitting like that with her teeth snarled. And this man continued to run through the water. So finally, the elders see that he's going to go past. Excuse me. And they run out there towards him and they grab him and they pull him out of the river. And they went and they got a car, made him pack up everything, and drove him off the res.
Whoa.
And my brother said for the rest of the night, even after that happened, they heard shrieking, screaming, knocking on wood, cracks. It was like, he said, as much as it was beautiful, it was the worst sleep ever because you were sitting there every single little thing. And you heard it louder than you would ever expect because there's nothing else out there.
Oh my goodness. And I've driven through the Warm Springs Reservation, but I'm not overly familiar with it. Is this talking about how the border of the reservation is the Deschutes River?
Yes.
Okay. I get it. All right. Very interesting.
He described it, he's like, is this one little spot that they do these things that's considered kind of ceremonial ground. So it's not like it's the whole Deschutes River. It's just a specific area. And my theory is that might be a nesting ground.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think it's out of the question. It's a beautiful area to drive through. It's weird because you drive down from Mount Hood and it's just forest, and then all of a sudden it comes into high desert and you go through canyons, and if you've never, it's just like you're getting a little taste of the American West, like the old view of it. It's very cool.
It's like
so
to be a pioneer.
yeah, no, it really is. Yeah, it was cool to see a guy from Iowa who doesn't really get to see that stuff. It was pretty cool. But yeah, thank you for sharing that story from Warm Springs. I've always wanted to talk to someone about that area. I've even tried to reach out to elders on the reservation. I haven't gotten anything yet, but I do appreciate you sharing that story.
It's very hard to get brought to that point. And that is also another reason why when my brother told me, with my uncle with him, they both told me together, look, we'll tell you what happened, but we're going to leave some things out and we can never tell you where it happened.
Did they ever have, so after they eventually both get home, they're off the reservation. Did anything weird happen after that, or no residual things? Yeah.
Not to them. No, I can't tell you if anything happened to the other gentleman. And I don't think that from the way that it went down, my brother or my uncle wanted to have any affiliation because they didn't want to lose respect with that they had gained.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. And what year again would you say that was approximately?
I think 2015.
Okay, 2015. Okay, cool. Wow, that is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
And that pretty much brings me to my personal own experience as an adult before I tell you some of my theories of why I think they're starting to show up in more places.
Awesome.
So with me, the same ex that had the experience in the car at Shotgun Creek, except this time him and I were driving. So my dad happened to live in Cottage Grove at this time, and there's a back road called Gowdyville that can connect, if you take it, to go through Cottage Grove and get through the back roads and connect back to basically the territorial highway, and that goes through Lorraine and Crow and Veneta and all that. But so we had driven through Gowdyville, we were on territorial highway, and we pulled off on Wolf Creek, which is between like that area of Cottage Grove and Lorraine. And locals will recognize that name pretty well. Wolf Creek is very close to Crow. And also there's some places up there like Panther Creek and other notable places, and it connects to the backside of Notai. So
sure,
out to a lot of different forestry angles. But yeah, we were up at Wolf Creek. We had decided to stop there because there's this really pretty spot in water that we usually like to just stop and talk at, and I'd take pictures or whatever. At this particular time, he happened to need to have a rest break. And So he pulls up to this Y, and it's a pretty known Y intersection at Wolf Creek on the log road. And he parked like on the side of the road, and then he walked across the road in the apex of the Y, if you will, to stand by a tree so that he could relieve himself. While he's doing that, and again, it's not even dusk yet. It's maybe 4 o'clock, but it was the summertime. And this was in 2019. I decide that, okay, here's an opportunity. I should probably pee too. So I decide to open the door. That way I can, if somebody does happen to go by, I'll be in between the car and the door so nobody will see me. And I'm not thinking anything about the trees behind me. No sooner do I get my britches down, I hear a huge, loud knocking sound, but it's not far away. It's beside my ear. Like, boom. And my ex heard it, and he's, whoa, what was that? And I did as fast as I could to not pee on myself and pulled my pants up, and I was like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, again, the same whack. After the second whack, I was like, nope. And I slammed the door, and he is still trying to get himself together from across the road. And he heard it, and he knew why I decided to slam the door. And I was looking at him like, come on, let's go. And apparently, as he was coming back to walk across the road, he said that he saw a 9-foot tall figure, hairy man, run across the road, like maybe 4 feet from him, from the forest where I was, that was to my back, across the road to the other side where he was peeing. And I said, so you saying you seen a Sasquatch? And he goes, oh, absolutely. And it ran that way, and we're not sticking around.
Oh, wow.
And he gets in the car, peels out, and we're gone. And that was the one that made me go, I am absolutely a believer at this point. There's just too much things that have happened. There's just too many people, too many incidences, and how it all overlaps. I don't see why all these people that I've known all my life or in all these different experiences would tell me these things about the woods if it's not real. My theory on why we're starting to see more is because I think, especially with referencing McKinsey, the holiday farm fire was huge. It burned for a long time. It burned a lot of woods, and we've had multiple in the last, probably since 2016-ish, we've had several very large forest fires all throughout the state that have burned up old growth areas. And I think that all of our wildlife that's starting to look for places to thrive and live, that they're having to come down to.
I agree with you 100% on that. That lines up exactly with a lot of interviews that I've done lately. 2 years ago, when I went out to Oak Ridge for the first time, there was a huge fire in the Oak Ridge area. And I mean, that July, people from our group were having sightings all over the place. And so 100% the fires have something to do with it. It has got to be the fires, which is too bad because the fires are terrible. I'm not a big fan of the fires. I don't think anyone is out there either, but
controlled burns, I understand. I get logic, and we have some flora and fauna that has to, but a lot of this is not. It's man-made, either negligence or stupidity. And then some of these, though, they were like the holiday farm fire, I believe, was a lightning strike fire, and it was just horrible. And it's going to take probably 40 years before it's all the same. And so all of that, anything that was up there, it's going to have to go find new places for resources.
This last year, I learned firsthand just how you have to be really careful with large fires out there, like the Prineville one.
Yeah.
When I was driving through Warm Springs, I actually drove too close to that fire. And it got to the point where I was pretty much I almost passed out a few times driving, which is extremely scary. You're really close, buddy. And thankfully I was able to drive west to Sisters and get out of there. But man, that was so scary. It was absolutely scary stuff. You do not mess around with fires out there. Anyone who's listening, do not mess around with them.
Yeah, take the warning seriously, because it's not just the actual flame, it's everything else that you would not think of. The flame is dangerous, don't get me wrong, but the way that it travels through the air and the way that it stifles the oxygen is, yeah.
Oh, that's true. That is true.
Levels are insane.
So after you've had all these anecdotes from different people in your family and your friends, and then you've had these experiences yourself, how has this affected the way that you view and you treat this? It's a phenomenon that happens in the region where you live. Is it something where you're drawn to it now? Maybe you go out looking yourself, or you're just treating it with respect, or?
I wouldn't say I'm an avid Bigfoot hunter. I don't go out of my way to go find things. I do treat it with respect. I feel, especially after some of the things that I've heard from natives about the way that they are, and even being able to, if it is intelligent enough to make treaties, what does that say about it? You know what I'm saying? So
True.
to me, that's just, I feel like maybe it's just an unknown simian species we haven't completely got to understand. And I look at it as I would any other thing in the natural space. Protect and respect the spaces, conserve them to the best of your ability, and don't harass nature. Just let Mother Nature do what it does. Respect it. If it's given you the warning sign that it doesn't want you there, leave. That's the way I feel about it.
Absolutely. So thank you for sharing your experiences in your accounts. We also talked about, or at least we mentioned at the beginning, that you are an author. Do you mind sharing a bit about what kind of books you've written, or so people can maybe check those out?
I would love to.
All right.
I'm really more of a multi-genre author, but I tell people, because I write a lot of paranormal stuff, that I'm mostly paranormal, but I've also done suspense and romance. And so most accurately, I'd say I'm a gothic author. Biggest influence was Anne Rice. I actually have a new release that's coming out on Friday. It's in the romantasy genre and not totally related to all of this stuff, but all of the mystical and mythical and folklore, if you will, is what really influences me. And because it's folklore and that can cross so many different intersectional genres and belief systems and cultures, I've noticed that's what's showing up a lot in what I write, whether it be romance, like the romantasy, or some of the horrors. Like I'm also about to be featured in an anthology from a publisher named Wicked Shadow Press. It's called Unholier Than Thou, and it's a 2-part anthology. So I'm going to be in the second volume, I believe. It's called Dark Divinity, for a story called The Vessel. And The Vessel is a sci-fi kind of religious horror, if you will. Yeah.
Wow. Whoa. What's the name of the book that is going to be out on Friday?
It is called Embracing His Empire. And again, like I said, it's a romantasy. It's got like empirical influences. Like I'm very fascinated by Roman and Greek mythology and history and stuff like that. And so it's kind of loosely empirical like that, but it's also on a fictional planet that I created. It's the first in the series, and the series is called The Captive Heart of Pretis.
Nice. That's cool. Good thing is when people listen to this, it will already be out, because this will be out past that Friday. What's the best place for people to check out books that you've written?
I have some that are just in Kindle Unlimited, which Embracing His Empire, with my publisher, they decided to go ahead and just put it in KDP. So you can get it on Amazon, and it is on pre-order right now. So even if this is airing after the date, it is on pre-order. You'll know that. And other ones, though, I have 24 different titles out. And then again, obviously, I'm in several anthologies as well. That just depends on who the publisher was. And most of them are available on like your common, like Barnes and Noble. All of them are on Amazon. Some of them are on like Kobo and things like that. You can find me just about anywhere if you Google Sai Marie Johnson.
Fantastic. Hopefully we'll have listeners check that out. I'll have the links to those where you can check out Sai's work down in the description or the show notes for this episode. But it has been really fun talking to you today, Sai, and thank you for sharing some anecdotes and some experiences from from your life. And we're going to cut this short because the northern lights are causing havoc to my electronics right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The geomagnetic storm has been kind of crazy.
I need to, I'm sorry. I do need to shut this down because I can hear everything going like.
All right. It was great to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.